Hey everybody, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm Kelly Barrett, your host here at Etcetera Live. Super excited for my guest tonight. We want to thank you for your patience for hanging out and waiting for us to come. He is a member of one of my favorite Canadian bands, and I'm super happy to have him in the house. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Welcome Dave Betts from Honeymoon Suite. Dave.
Kelly, thank you very much, and tremendously sorry about the delay. It seems like it's all my fault, so sorry to you and sorry to the viewers. I'm happy to be here.
No worries. It's it's the internet stuff. It happens, and I'm just glad you're here. So happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. I'm just about to sit down to dinner. No, I'm kidding.
I'll be back in an hour. Amuse yourself. So I'll give you a topic.
No problem.
Did you have a big feast? Did you do the family thing?
We did it yesterday, and my daughter was back from college. And so we had and we don't do turkey anymore. So we did a really nice roast beef with mashed potatoes and turnip and rice and lots of veggies. And so it was really nice. Yourself?
Nice. Turkey's overrated. No, I didn't really do a lot of turkey this year. I had some Lithuanian food one night, and I had some chicken, and then I had a Thanksgiving donair tonight before the show. So,
well, funny, we stopped doing turkey because it takes so long to prepare. It's like never ending, and then it's done in like 10 minutes. But one year, it was at least 10 years ago, there was a tremendous heat wave here. I live by Lake Huron,
right,
and it was 35 degrees Celsius. So 95 Fahrenheit, and it was so hot, and people were swimming in the lake, and there were boats, and there were sea-doos, and then we came up, we all had turkey, and we sat in our bathing suits outside, and like, this is silly. So since then, get a nice roast in the oven and good time, and it was perfect. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, it's all about the company, really. I think Dave, I was having a conversation with myself. I'm such a huge fan, and so I had to have that conversation that I have with myself sometimes, where I have to remind myself not to be a big dork, not to be fangirl, but to be a
fangirl away.
Yeah, so I'm super excited you're here, and I just have to say this. I know I saw you at Rock the River in Saskatoon last August. And so there wasn't a lot going on then, but you guys sure did a lot this summer. And isn't it good to be back?
Yeah, really good. We've been very lucky. We've been busy. We played in Europe for a great show. We've done Canada coast to coast, certainly in the summer, but we were lucky that we play mostly throughout the year. But it was a very busy summer. And the line I love to quote is from Gary, our bass player, and we did a show one night, and we're literally coming off stage, and he goes, "Once again, the crowd's better than the band," and because the crowds have been tremendous. It's been tremendous, and I suspect that a lot of that has to do with it's post-COVID.
They missed you.
Yeah, people are out and they're having a good time and they're really letting their yayas out. But, we're having a good time, and I think we're doing good shows, and couple that with these great responses from the crowds, and it's been, you don't take that for granted.
I would imagine. And so I'm just curious, after maybe your hiatus wasn't as long as some people's, but did it feel almost awkward to be back, or was it just like getting back on the bicycle?
It was kind of like getting back on a bicycle. It was, it was just before everything shut down. So it was February 2020, and we got back at it in June 2021. And oddly, I'm wondering, can I do this? I'm going to faint because I haven't played in so long. I got to do this long show. Because it's very quiet, and you try to practice and you try to keep up to date, and you go over the songs, over and over again, to the point where you start confusing yourself.
Right.
And so you stop practicing the songs again and again. So it was fine, and it was in New Brunswick. It was tremendous, and we had a great summer in 2021, and then it shut down, which was such a surprise. Pardon me. And we lost we lost a lot of shows, and
Right.
it was, and then silence until was it May this year? I guess May 2022, and then we've been lucky enough to keep going. I did catch COVID at some point during the summer, and I think it was from a show. But I've had a lot worse, so it was not pleasant. But we're able to continue on, and we're all fine now.
I've heard it. I've heard some people have just had it and it just knocked them like a Mack truck for a couple of weeks. And then other people said, I've had hangovers worse than this, but
No, it didn't knock me for a loop, but honestly, I have had in the past lung issues, so I can get. We did a tour with Foreigner a number of years ago, and I was in the midst of bronchitis, and I kind of get it here and there, or sinusitis. So there's always something, and so having this, and thankfully I had been vaccinated and boosted, and I think it really helped. And
for sure.
therefore, it felt like just a really crappy cold. It just, it just didn't. Thank goodness for Advil and things like that. But
Right.
eventually, it moved on. So it was fine. And as I said, I felt worse playing. I'm sure than I did with COVID. So I
Well,
was
your
like,
job is so physical. Like you probably have the hardest job physically out of anybody in the band. And I'm wondering, did your experience with COVID, and I hate to, and we'll move on after this because it's kind of a sad topic, but on a positive note, did it in any way change your, just your overall perspective on life? As far as, looking at things through different glasses and what's really important and not taking things
um,
for granted and that sort of thing.
a very good question. I try not to take things for granted. I really do, and I really try to accept and recognize and embrace how lucky I've been. I mean, I've just been such a lucky guy, and including professionally and personally and all that
Right.
stuff. So, truthfully, no, I didn't. I just knew that I had this, and my wife and daughter also had it, but they had it about 2 months before I did.
Right.
And so I was encouraged that, well, they got over it, well, hopefully I can too. And
Right.
and and I did, and it was fine. I moved on, and I think many people will get it, and hopefully many people will be okay at the end of the day.
Right. Absolutely. It definitely changed the way I see things for sure, but in a very positive way.
Oh, good.
And yeah, and my, and I've said this before, what is important to me is different. My bucket list looks different. It's just
Really?
about being with family. It used to be about big ticket things, and now it's about the little things like, the people I love being, healthy and happy and not
Yeah.
getting COVID and
Well,
that sort of stuff. But
I guess
anyway,
so. Yeah, that's totally understandable, and as you say, it can be a life changing event for many people.
for sure. And so, I want to focus on the present tonight, Dave, but I think people always want to know, was music always going to be your journey? There goes the window's open, so I got a nice breeze in here.
Got a ghost in your house.
So yeah, was it always going to be music for you? Did you know that
No,
from the get? No.
no. I mean, from the time I was 9 years old, actually, pretty much by the time I was 7, I remember at a day camp, our tent had to put on a presentation, and I think every tent was like a country or something like that.
Right.
And I think we were an African country, and somebody had bongos, and the counselors, anybody play drums? And for some, yeah, I do. And of course, I never had, but I could do it. I
Right.
could play the bongos, and I could sort of keep a beat, and I thought that was interesting. So when I was 9 years old, well, before that, of course, other things, but the Monkees came out, and that was a hugely popular television show and band at
Right.
the time. So I was inspired by that, and eventually got some drumsticks, and I got a practice pad, and then a couple of years later I got a snare drum. Then I was 12, I got a drum set, and of course it was something that I loved and could do and fantasized about, obviously. But as high school was ending, I sort of started to move away a bit from drums and concentrate on other things. And I don't know why, but I kind of did. And one of them was to try to figure out what I was going to do. And I felt that I had an interest in film and television and film and radio and things like that. So there was a course at what was called Ryerson University in Toronto, and it was a
Right.
radio television arts course, and it was considered the best in the country. And so I had a desire to maybe go there somewhere, maybe camera work, maybe editing. And I tried to get in, and I applied, and I couldn't get in. And then I repeated my last year of high school again to apply again, and of course I didn't get in. And and from there I was aware of a course at a college in London, Ontario called Fanshawe
Yeah.
College, and they had what was called Music Industry Arts. And at the time, it was a very rare thing to have a course that focused on recording engineering and record production. So also at that time, I always did like drums and I practiced and things like that. And I had a little bit of experience setting up drums for a Nashville drummer who would come up to Toronto to do some session work. And so I kind of really dug the studio scene. And so I took a stab at this course and I applied and I auditioned and I got in. So, oh, okay. So I was into that and just things just lucked out. I did well. I was one of the more popular drummers, so I did a lot of session work at school. And I was asked to join this band that had a small indie record deal after college, and I just sort of kept doing it, and I even gave myself a little timetable. Well, if it's not happening by then, well, then I'll move on. And
Was that the Steve Blimke
it
band?
was
Right.
very good. Yes, it was Steve Blimke. In those days, it was a small indie label. I mean, they had the Spoons, and they
Right.
had Blue Peter, and some other acts, and so they did quite well, certainly with the Spoons. But we never did. And even though we toured Canada and we did some very good shows, and Derry from Honeymoon Suite eventually joined, which was quite fortuitous. But I do remember giving myself sort of this timetable. Then I realized, I don't. This is silly. I'm hardly anywhere. I hardly have my toe in the door here. So again, I got lucky and ended up in Honeymoon Suite with Derry, and they were lucky enough to do well.
Right. So that was back in 1983, and things just seemed to really take off for you guys quick because, 1986 you win the Juno for most promising group of the year, and I was thinking
Oh,
about
it was, sorry to correct you. It was
that's
Group of the Year.
a group of the. Oh, I'm sorry, group of
Yes.
the year. Yeah, I do stand corrected. I'm glad you corrected me.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
No, it's all good. And so I was kind of thinking when I was kind of going over some stuff today, I thought, in 1986, you get the Group of the Year award, and you'd only been in the band, you'd only been there for 3 years, and then and I think it was the following year that you presented the Juno Award with Mark Holmes from Platinum Blonde for Best Instrumentational Music, I think, and it was David Foster that.
I think you're right. Yes.
So you had some pretty stellar moments, like right off the bat, and I'm.
Oh.
Right? Yeah. So is there ever a time when you're slightly blown away by your own damn self or your life, and what's happening for you? Is there ever a time where
not
you're
myself, definitely not myself, but my
but you know
life.
what I'm saying? Like your life,
Yeah.
finish me. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's funny because the music industry can take forever to get going, but it seems to happen overnight. So I mean, we were very lucky that when our first record came out, and it was released in the United States at the same time, and it did very well at radio, and the video oddly did very, very well at MTV. And that was really our ticket right there. So the fact that
Right.
MTV liked us very much and played it quite often. In those days, MTV in 1984 was this massive thing. And so that helped open up many, many doors for us in Canada as well as in the US. And the one time I do recall being, well, there were a number of times where I was intimidated, but one time I was a bit overwhelmed was when we did Dick Clark's American Bandstand.
I bet.
And that was, I think our record came out in June, and this was likely in September, maybe October. So it was just, it was hard to believe that I was there at this studio in Hollywood, California, and what am I doing here, sort of thing. But
Right.
we did it, and I'm thrilled we did.
It's just one of those life is good moments, right? And one of the questions I had for you, or more of a comment, was, a lot of Canadian bands try and transition over into the U.S. and it's a hard task, and it doesn't happen for everybody. But you, like Honeymoon Suite, certainly did well in the U.S. And like I was actually kind of blown away when I realized that Honeymoon Suite songs were featured on. I had to actually write it down because there was 4 or 5 incidences, but. Like the American TV and film industry sure took notice because you did the title track for Lethal Weapon. Yes, the Mel Gibson movie, Lethal Weapon.
The original movie, yeah, that was very nice. Yeah.
And a couple of songs were featured on Miami Vice, Bad Attitude and New Girl Now.
I think Feel It Again was too.
Is that right? I watched a couple of them today, and I watched Bad Attitude, and there's Crockett and Tubbs in their Ferrari.
You know what? I think. Sorry to interrupt you there. I apologize.
That's okay.
But I think Bad Attitude was the last song ever.
Finale. It was their finale.
On Miami Vice. I mean, before the credits or something like that. But I think we were the last band, the last song to be used on that show.
I think you're right. It was season 6, and it was the finale where Like how does that happen? How do you get how do you be a Canadian band and then get connected with and there's more. Like there was also the Bad Attitude and What Does It Take was featured on the soundtrack for the John Cusack film One Crazy Summer, and then there was a song featured on The Wraith with Charlie Sheen. And how does that happen? How do you get connected like that?
Well, we had good management,
right?
So that helps. We also had. It's generally the work. It's generally being at the right place at the right time, I think, but also the hard work from our music publishers in the U.S. and our record labels in Canada and the U.S. So, I mean, often, situations like this, they want to use an act that's, popular at the time. So, we were, and so that helped. And so we were lucky to. And often these music supervisors, they're fans, and so we were fortunate to do that, and it was a lot of exposure for us, and we were doing a lot of touring back then too. So that certainly helped us immensely as well.
Right, and so I was wondering, with all the touring, one of the questions I had for you, Dave, was because you also teach, is that correct?
I do teach. I teach drums privately, but I also teach a class on copyright law at a school in Toronto.
So that being said, with the touring and the recording and the teaching, and how do you get a work-balance family life? Like, how do you balance that out?
A very understanding family. But in the old days, when we were on the road back in the day, you could literally be gone for 2 months at a time.
For sure.
And you would come home for 2 days, 3 days.
Right.
And go again. And so I was really thankful that I did not have a serious relationship at the time. I was not married. I was not seriously involved with anyone or living with anyone with children. But I can imagine musicians who do that. It's got to be hard, and believe it or not, there's a lot of loneliness when you are on the road like that. You're doing a job, and your drums are set up, and it's sort of like being in the same office every day, but the office is in a different city, and that's part of it. And you understand that. You do your promotional work, you visit radio stations and talk to journalists and things like that. But it's really hard. But these days, and again, I hate to constantly use this word, how lucky we are, but we are a band that does well on our circuit. So we do a lot of shows where we might be gone from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, home on Sunday. And then,
Right.
and I live a few hours from Toronto now, and you drive home and then you sort of do your thing and then you go away again. And so it's pretty much been the way ever since I came back in the band. And so I've been back for 15 years now. And I was
Wow.
gone for 17 years, believe it or not. So it was a real adjustment for myself and my family. But we're all comfortable with it, and it's not that hard. It's just sort of weekend warrior things that some guys say, but it's not like the old days. Again, we're not on the road for
All
2 or
year
3
round kind of thing,
yeah,
right?
where you're gone for months and months at a time.
Right. I agree with you. I was on the road for 23 years, and it's like the 4 hours a night are amazing, and then the other 20 just suck because you're usually in a small town and there's nothing to do, and
Yeah.
but you're lucky, I think, because I know I read a little bit about your wife, and she's got her own thing going on. So your wife is no slouch either. You know what I mean? So I think that helps when you have
I'm a
somebody
slouch.
your wife is into politics and journalism and all kinds of good stuff. So, but I think it helps when you have somebody that has also their own success and their own career in their own right.
Oh, you know what? And I
Yeah.
think that's, we've been married for 31 years and we've been
Right
together
on.
for 35 years. And I think what helps us, and it's not for everybody, of course, but it was important for me to try to meet someone, settle down, whatever term you
For sure.
want to use. So someone that wasn't necessarily involved in the music industry, and it wasn't a fan, and it wasn't, it was like, she looks at my career, with respect, but with amusement, and that's fine too. And she has her own thing going, and I have mine. And I think that works very well for us. I think it's harder sometimes for people who A, date someone from their industry. That can be difficult.
Right.
B, date a fan. It's not unheard of. Clearly, I know many people have done it very well, but that can be hard too. And I think when you're involved with someone who isn't necessarily tightly inherently attached to your industry, I think it can help, and for us, luckily, it has.
Right. Right. I would agree. I think then you bring, you each kind of bring something to the table. And so what's your, I got to ask you this because there's a lot of women watching. What's your advice to staying married that long? Any words of wisdom?
Golly,
Marriage advice from Dave Betts.
yeah, really. It's worth the price that you're paying for this. That's a very good question, Kel. I would say try to. Boy, I don't know how to articulate this. I guess I've never been asked this. Respect.
Right.
Try to respect. Try not to sweat the small stuff.
Right.
Try to be. Try to have decency. Try to listen. I think listening is important, and understanding, and know that we all have good days and bad days, and try not to take and this is always a fight in a sense. Try not to take things too personally.
For sure.
If someone's not having a good day, I don't know what else. Try to keep things interesting. We're lucky. Again, I'm sorry to use that word one more time.
No,
But
it's
our
good.
daughter, or we only have one daughter, and she's 19, and she's gone off to college. But I know people when their kids go away to school that they sort of like, well, what do we do now? But we get along, so we enjoy each other's company. And these days we're together 24 hours a day. Where believe it or not, in the old days, I worked at SOCAN, as you may know, for 11 years, and my wife was a news anchor on television. And she did the 11 o'clock news. So she would get home at 1 o'clock in the morning. I would stay up till 2, and then I'd go to bed. And we did that for years and years. And weekends we had together, often at our cottage, which was a challenge, but that was the only time we had together.
Right.
And so it was difficult. And I don't know if you have children, but having a child is a challenge as well. But we're very, very lucky having a beautiful, talented, and what's the word I'm looking for? Empathetic, funny human being as our daughter. She's great, and
Nice.
it's all worked out very well.
Good stuff. Yeah, I don't have children, but I have a lot of friends that do. And I think, you said it right there, Dave. If you can raise a decent human that you can say is a decent human, I think that you've done your job too. And speaking of your SoCan career there, that was during a slight hiatus from Honeymoon Suite, correct?
17 years, 17
Right.
years I was out of that band. Yeah.
And
So
so can I ask, is it okay if I ask what was the catalyst to you then going on to something different?
oh,
Is that
that's
is that
sure.
okay?
I've talked to everybody about it, so
I'm
it's
sure.
no problem at all. It was a combination of, uh, well, initially it was for me that we weren't working, and they were working on new songs, and I remember hearing some songs and liking them, and then hearing some other songs, and not necessarily like what happened to these other songs, and well, we're trying something different, so. And so there was nothing in the pipeline. And when you're a musician and you're not working, you're not working. And, the savings can only really
Right.
hold out for so long. So you're sort of like, I might want to do something else here. And at that stage in my life, again, drumming was something that didn't hold my interest as much as it had in the past, sadly. And so I was ready to move on. And so literally, the band called a meeting one day, and I went in thinking, well, if I think today's the day. And I talked to people from our label and told them about it, and they were like, well, that's fine if that's what you want to do, go for it. And they were very encouraging. And so I went to this meeting, and so we sort of talked what is it that we want to do, and to my surprise, they're like, well, Dave, we think we might want to move on, and we just might want to work with some other players. And I said, well, that's funny, because I'm here to tell you that I'm going to quit today. And so it was fine. It was all
Right.
very mutual, and I encouraged them because I had played with other players too, and
Right.
it's very encouraging. I think we were in a bit of a rut, and so creatively, and certainly drum wise for me, I was. And so it was all done very well, and with respect on both sides, and they could sense that I wasn't really into it,
Right.
and I wasn't. So in that sense, they moved on. In the 90s, they did this one record, which I think actually is a brilliant record, called Monsters Under the Bed. And some wonderful stuff on that record. And I did not play on that record. They had a studio drummer by the name of Jorn Anderson play on that. And it's a wonderful album.
Yeah.
But two things went against that album, in my opinion. One, it was now 1991. And, the world was not necessarily looking at, primary colors like the 80s music was. It was now, Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and so and this is common in the music industry, in the entertainment industry. You really, unless you're tremendously fortunate, you really have just a small window of opportunity
Right.
to
Right.
do your thing. And tastes change, and fashions change, and all sorts of things change. So the 90s came along, and so that didn't help. And also that record, if you listen to it, it doesn't sound like Honeymoon Suite. It doesn't sound like us, even though it's brilliant. I think it just doesn't. And so I think it sadly just didn't appeal to a lot of our older fans, and therefore, not the '90s was hard for Honeymoon Suite, and they took a little hiatus there because there wasn't much going on, and I was very lucky to land on my feet at SOCAN, and I had a wonderful job there for 11 years. And I
Right.
left to be, honestly, to do parental leave, then go back. But then my life changed as my wife somehow got roped into running for politics. And to everyone's surprise, she won her riding, and therefore it wasn't worth me going back to work. So that's when I did that. And then a number of years later, then Honeymoon Suite reached out and thought about getting back together, and it's been great, absolutely great ever since.
Right. What's the original lineup again? And I'm wondering,
Yeah.
One of the questions was for you, Dave, was give me like when members leave the band and then reunite, which by the way, I'm impressed by that because you don't often see that. Usually when a member leaves, it's that's that. And I'm wondering, do you think that in some respects that you come back stronger purely as a result of just the individual unique experiences that you've had away from the band that you can then bring back?
Oh yeah, I think absolutely that, and I would couple that with the fact that there's different pressure now. So back in the day when you are trying to compete with Bruce Springsteen and Van
Right.
Halen and U2 and name any artists from that era. I mean, when you went to a record store, their records were right beside yours.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's who you're trying to compete with. So that comes with pressure, whether it's internal pressure that I'm putting them on myself or whatever. So, I mean, and, again, we were fortunate enough to do pretty well. And I remember our second album actually was on the Billboard charts, I believe, for over a year, believe it or not. So, I mean, we did do well with that record, and it certainly did well for Bruce Fairbairn, who went on from that release to do tremendously well. He was our producer.
Right.
But nowadays, when we play, of course, you're trying to do the very best you can. You're trying to do the best show. You're trying to be energetic. You're trying to, it's a term I heard Sting use one time. He said, you have to play a song like you wrote it 30 minutes before the show. And
that's good.
Yeah, and I know. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're acting, even though that's part of it to a certain degree. I mean, you are trying to show you're having a good time because you are having a good time.
Right. But it's been 35 years. I get what you're saying. You've been singing the songs, right?
Yeah. But I still enjoy playing New Girl now, and I still try to play it as well as I can every time. I mean, there's no part of me that is like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah, here we go, blah, blah. Yeah,
I love it. And so I think that helps us immensely. And I think what also helps us immensely is we have 4 of the 5 guys. So we are pretty much the band. And our singer, Johnny, he can sing. He can still sing. And he's a great guitar player. And Derry's a great guitar player. And Peter's a tremendous keyboard player. And Gary and I, were able to sound like Honeymoon Suite in the background there. And, the sum of the parts are greater than the whole, if that's the term. I'm not really sure. But by the same token, it works. And people have a great time. And to go back to that line, once again, the crowd's better than the band. Because they've been wonderful.
I love that. And I'm, thinking of these songs that, you've been singing for 35 plus years and that people still want to hear them and people still want to see you play. I was at Rock the River in Saskatoon last summer and I love that there was different generations now enjoying, the music and how amazing that is. What do you think it is? Because not every Canadian band can say this. What do you think it is about Honeymoon Suite and the songs that have managed to captivate a nation and still to this day to have this type of longevity? What do you think that is?
Well, I don't know if captivate is the correct term. I'll take it.
Still.
Well, I think, bands like us, and Glass Tiger is a band similar to us, is that we still get radio airplay.
Yes.
And a lot of our fans and people of our age and people who are, of a certain era,
right.
They enjoy hearing those songs because they've heard them on the radio. And I remember one time we did a show once. It was out in Nova Scotia. It was a great festival. And then we came off stage, and one of the stagehands said, "Yeah, I forgot." And he said, "Yeah, they do that song. Oh, they do that song and that song and that song." And That's great. So, I mean, people remember the songs. We're able to play them very closely to what they originally sound like, and it takes people back, and I think we all have an era between 12 and 15 or 16 where music was, it for us. And when you hear certain songs, it almost takes you back, I'm doing my homework, or
Yes.
I'm whatever. And it takes you right there. It takes you right there. And so that's the great thing about music, and the fact that we're able to recreate that in a live situation, with some energy and with some positivity, because we always hope people have a good time. Then it works out. It's a great combination.
Right. I would agree with that, Dave. We're getting a ton of comments, and I kind of knew that was going to happen. So I'm
Oh,
just going to go to some people that are joining us tonight. Lance Hackowich is saying, hi, Dave.
hi, Lance.
Lance. Lee Canfield. Lee Canfield is saying, happy Thanksgiving to you both. Love
Thank you.
Honeymoon. Yeah, love Honeymoon Suite. And what can you say about a super drummer as you, Dave? Continued success. Stay happy, healthy, and rocking. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you very much.
We love Lee. He's a great fan of the show. Perry Boyko, you may know, is saying, Dave, you actually autographed my guitar in Saskatoon at Rock the River.
Thanks, Perry.
Yeah, thanks, Perry. Always good to see you. Marlene Reagan, great friend of mine. Happy Thanksgiving. Love Honeymoon Suite. It's so awesome to see you.
Oh,
it just got Jeanette Gravel.
People are watching?
They're all watching. Yeah.
I thought it was just you and I just chatting.
Shooting the breeze, having some drinks.
I've got a cocktail here. I shouldn't.
Well, after how hard it was for us to get on the air, I think a cocktail was in order.
That's what I was.
Right? Karen Barg is saying, hey, Dave.
Hi, Karen.
Big hi from your fiddle friend in Winnipeg.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I saw Karen a couple of weeks ago.
Awesome. So Karen's also a fan of the show. There's many more, and I'll get to a few in a bit. But I need to take a minute to acknowledge my show sponsors, Writers and Rockers Coffee Company.
Wow.
Thank you for the support I have here. I don't know if you can see this, Dave, but this is the Todd Kearns Damn It blend.
Todd.
We love Todd. He covers some Honeymoon Suite pretty nice.
I've never met Todd. I can't wait to meet them. I think Took are absolutely wonderful.
Amazing.
They're so good.
They're amazing.
I've seen them do a cover online, of course, of New Girl Now, and Fritz is drumming, and it's like he's the only one who's ever got it right.
I was lucky enough to see them, but Todd's been on the show, and I was lucky enough to see them, I don't know, maybe 8 weeks ago, and they are one of the best bands I've ever seen live.
They're all fantastic players. They're all the best players.
Right. Hanging out with Slash. Todd is playing with Slash. Fritz is playing with Slash. And
yeah, I know. Right?
Corey's doing the Shania Twain thing. And, speaking of it, like the music industry, I just feel like it's changed so much over the years, largely due to technology. And I'm just curious, Dave, what your take is on, as far as the technology goes, do you think it's been a positive thing, or do you think it's kind of been a hindrance in some way? I'm just curious what your take on that is.
I would say both. I certainly think it's positive to the extent that there's so much out there, and there's so much good music out there. There really is. But everybody's, here an issue that sadly is part of this is that anybody can release music now, where it used to be there were these gatekeepers, record companies and A&R directors and managing director, all sorts of things that sort of, that what they picked, they thought was the best of the best sort of thing. Where now anybody can put up music on YouTube or on Spotify or whatever streaming service you want. And a great line I heard years and years ago from someone was like, just because your name's in the phone book doesn't mean everyone's going to call you.
Right.
And that's part of it. So, there's too much out there. I think there's so much out there, and the accessibility is so easy to have that it takes away from the old days where someone could put a record out and have a major label, and that still happens now. Don't get me wrong, but it's the stream of money that can come in for an artist now is completely different, and
Right.
and I don't want to say it's devalued anything because I think music is tremendously valuable, but the fact that you can put a song out there that you've worked hard on and try to sell it for $1 and someone's not going to pay for it, and they might stream it, and you end up getting for thousands and literally thousands of streams, you would get pennies. Or, so that's a real issue for me, and especially we talk about this in my copyright class, is that I think the money that is being paid out is so small, and I believe it has to go through a record label and maybe a publisher and all sorts of things before the artist may see something. So I don't like that, but I do like the accessibility of
For
wonderful.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And even just the medium for us, a platform for us to do this show.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, there are definitely, pros and cons. I was just curious your take on that. It's funny. So Tad Goddard from Prism is in the house.
Hey, Tad.
Yeah, hey Tad. Good to see you, buddy. He just
Tad.
says we're getting old, and he's chiming in on the marriage advice, and he's saying time apart is good.
What did you say? Sorry?
Time apart is good.
Time apart is good.
And Dave Reimer's in the house. Dave Reimer, of course, is with Lee Aaron.
Dave is a tremendous player, as is Tad. And that's the great thing about what we do now, is we meet some really great people, coast to coast. And I mean, in the other bands we play with. So we play with Prism quite a bit, and Lee Aaron, and all sorts of different bands.
Sure.
And you get to know these guys and girls, and they're all wonderful, and their crew. And everyone's very supportive, I find. They're really nice people.
And isn't there such a camaraderie among Canadian musicians? And I think that maybe at one time there might have been maybe more of a competitive nature to things. But what I noticed when I was at Rock the River, and I was lucky because Uncle Bernie Aubin took me backstage. And so I was meeting all these, idols of mine. And the one thing that really struck me was, that real sense of cheering each other on, and artists watching other artists show and break a leg and patting them on the back on the way up and applauding them. And I loved seeing that. I thought I was so proud of our Canadian artists when I was at Rock the
think
River.
It's, I think you're right. Back in the day, and there are certainly in the indie music scene, they all seem to be pals, and yay, let's go and be on everybody's record, and nobody's competitive. But deep down, of course, you are a bit. Back in the day, I mean, you're trying to do well, you're trying to climb that mountain and make a living, etc., etc. I think now it's a lot brothers in arms. So many of us have been through this for a long time. We're still playing, at an advanced age, and so it's kind of like hockey players. You ever see hockey players when they get together? And they used to battle and sometimes fight, and to the death seemingly, and then after the game's over, after they retire, they're the best of friends because only what I've been through.
Exactly.
And so I think that's part of it.
Right. So Dave Reimer, I'm sorry, Dave, I was going to read your comment. Says, Dave, meaning you, what an awesome human being you are. Love your playing. Love our chats. All the best. Happy Thanksgiving. Aw. Thanks for joining in, Dave. There's tons of them. Michael Patch is in the house. Michael Patchaluk.
Oh, really, Patch?
Patches, he's been on the show too. He was he asked me earlier on to ask you about your incredible Martin acoustic guitar collection.
They're not that incredible. I have one right here, actually.
Oh, well, as luck would have it.
If I could.
Why don't you play us a tune?
There's one right there. Patch is one of the nicest guys you'll absolutely ever meet. And boy, I wish I could hire him as my drum tech, because there was one time we did a show in Edmonton, and he was doing some work with the head pins, which he does from time to time.
Right.
And he's so good, and he's so nice. And he tuned my drums just to be nice. And boy, did they ever sound great. And I remember him afterwards saying, boy, your toms, man, when you hit your toms, they sounded so great. And I'm like, well, that's because of you. That's why it's not me, it's you. So he's absolutely a gift. As for my collection, it's not that great. It's just a bit of a hobby. So I
How many do you have?
10. Just 10.
Oh, just a minor little hobby.
Well, I mean, there are people. I mean, ask Todd how many he has, or ask. Well, Dave
Right.
Weimer's a great. He's a manufacturer. I mean, he makes bases. He makes tremendous bases too. So I imagine he's got a wonderful collection too, aside
Right.
from what he creates. So it's just. I mean, it's not something that I'm really into as much as I was back in the day, but it's just fun to noodle on for me. You know, just to listen to the sound of the wood and the sound of the strings and bore my wife and daughter to death.
Patch is saying, I love that. Patch is saying Dave does the best Dinger impersonation ever. See you soon, brother. I'm assuming he's talking about Mike Dinger.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. I wasn't sure there. Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys for all the comments. There's tons of them. I will never get to all. Lisa Gooley, but I will say hi to Lisa Gooley.
Lisa, boy, what a photographer she is.
Right? Lisa, thank you for supplying me for all the stunning photos of the promo for Dave's show. Yeah, she is
Lisa's
truly
one of the good ones too. You know, I mean, I know I'm
is.
saying wonderful things about people. It's true. Lisa's one of the good ones, and she takes. And we saw her, Lisa. I'm forgetting a couple of weeks ago in Regina.
Right.
And afterwards, you know, people having a drink in the bar, and I quickly came in to say hello. And it'd been a very long day. I didn't stay too long, but I asked her, you know, where did you study? And she goes, I should have done this on my own. And like, you know, that's very impressive. I mean, this is someone who is self-taught, and you know, she takes wonderful pictures.
Incredible. Yeah.
All sorts of bands, and so she has a real talent and a lot of respect from all of us. So, you know, continued success.
Right on. Yeah, she was just curious if you're drinking Crown Royal. Oh, there was another thing. I heard that you make a wicked Crown Royal, and I can't remember who told me to ask you that.
Well, I am drinking just a tiny little bit of rye in here. I thought I'd experiment with it.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Oh, man, there's tons of comments here. Sorry, guys, I won't get to them all tonight because it's getting late. But I do want to ask you, just more on kind of on a personal side here, what are you most proud of? What would you say that you are the most proud of?
Of what, myself personally or professionally?
In your life, personally. Okay, we can work personally and professionally.
Oh, golly.
It's a tough one, hey? You know, because there's probably a lot.
Well, I'll say that two ways. Professionally, I'm proud to be still playing drums, and there's not a lot of people from my vintage who are still playing. You know, we're playing original music,
right?
And you know, and the band is still writing, and you know, that's a whole other talk for another day. The great songs that they're still writing, but the fact, you know, that I am not playing, you know, in a cover band, I'm not doing jams on Monday at some local chicken bar. I'm able to play, you know, drums. I'm physically and mentally, you know, knock on wood here. I'll touch the guitar here, you know, knock on wood. I'm still able to play. I'm still able to hit them hard. I'm able to play with people I enjoy being around, not just on stage, but off stage. We don't hang out necessarily a lot, but we do enjoy each other's company. So I'm proud of that I'm still be able to do that in my mid-60s, which I never thought I would ever say. And personally, I'm proud that, you know, we have, I live in a lovely home with a lovely family. And, you know, so proud of my daughter, and my wife is, you know, bless her heart, you know,
yeah.
We're not living on my money, that's for sure. So she works very hard, and she's so good at it, and she so cares about her clients and what she does. And so I'm proud that that's worked out well too, if that's the right term. I don't know if pride.
Or like just, yeah, well, you're proud of. I think that's something to be proud of, like, you know, or like maybe some of just the best things. What makes you happy maybe would have been a better way to pose that question. And what do you, you know, being Thanksgiving, I guess I could have said, what are you most grateful for? And that probably would have been it. And
probably is, yeah. And, you know, happiness, it's a funny thing. It's so hard for many people. And my father used to use a term about contentment. And I thought, you know, maybe contentment is something that we should try to achieve more than happiness.
I agree.
And because, you know, you can be chasing your tail for a long time, and some people I've known who are always trying to find that happiness. They're often the least happy people I know, and it's just, it's a short time we're here,
Right.
and just try to be content with what you have, and you don't have to find the perfect Prince Charming if you're looking for a husband, or the perfect supermodel if you're looking for a wife or a girlfriend or whatever. It's just sometimes finding something that just sort of clicks, and it doesn't have to be what Hollywood depicts as happiness or perfection.
Right. And I'm going to agree with your father here, Dave, because I really agree. I think contentment and joy is the goal, because happiness is fleeting. If I watch a movie or I eat something I like, that makes me happy for half an hour, but it's fleeting, right? It's very fleeting. And joy is just that continuum of just being okay where you are every day, just waking up and being okay and grateful for where you are and what you have. And
Right.
I think that's the goal. So I think your dad was onto something there.
Well, yeah, and he was a smart guy, and he was one of those guys that when you came up with a problem, he gave you a wonderful ear. But getting back to what you said, I've lost my train of thought a little bit. I apologize, but
That's okay.
we all struggle. I think pretty much everybody has some sort of issues that they're dealing with, and
Right.
and we all, it's physically and certainly mentally, and so you just have to try and overcome that. Not necessarily overcome with that, but sort of live with it. Almost, I don't want to say embrace it, but you know what I mean. It's just like
Acceptance.
I guess so. Just
Yeah.
something that you can deal with, and for me personally, I find if I get into a hypochondriac way, so to speak, and I focus on
Right.
something, as soon as I stop paying attention to it, often it goes away.
Right.
And so, we just, that's why that term contentment can be perfect in some respects, because it's just, maybe life hasn't worked out the way you'd hoped, but, you could be living in the Ukraine right now.
Absolutely. So just be okay. This is the goal. Not this. This is the goal.
Yeah.
For myself, anyway.
We're all going to be, dust one day. You try to do your best.
Right on. So I just want to quickly mention Mike Whaling. Now he's having a Crown Royal himself. So now we got the viewers drinking.
I'm going to see Mike on Wednesday, aren't I, Mike?
That's awesome.
On Wednesday at his lovely place.
Awesome. So let's talk about the future, and just to close here, Dave. So I do know that you guys have an exciting event coming up in January of next year with is it Rock Island?
I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
What a party that's going to be.
Yeah, we're lucky that we get to do a lot of these things. We do a lot of these rock cruises, and we do. We've done a number of these things, like used to be called 80s in the Sand, which is really cool. When it was 80s in the Sand, it was a lot cooler than it was just the sand. But because 80s in the Sand, it was at this hotel in the Dominican Republic, and people would decorate their doors with posters and all sorts of things. They had Sirius XM playing all throughout the complex on 80s on 8, and it was just, and movie stars from the 80s and MTV stars, and it was really, really great. But this is something similar along those lines, and so we are doing something. I think Styx is playing there, so hopefully we're playing the same day. I'd love to see Larry Gowan.
Oh, I'm seeing him on Friday. I'm seeing Larry on Friday.
You should get him on your show. He
was on like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, good. Well, he's like probably the nicest guy.
Super
in the music industry, like the nicest guy. But hopefully we'll see. So Styx is playing.
Loverboy.
You probably know. I know Queen's right. I know Helix is playing. Our friends from Kitchener, Ontario are playing.
Yeah, Vince Neil.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a new one. Yeah, like the lineup. I think 38 Special. The lineup is just
38
incredible.
Special.
Right. What a lot of fun that's going to be.
We did a tour of 38 Special once. We opened for them for at least 2 months one time back in the day, and they were great. They were really good.
Super cool. So, and just to close here, Dave, what else is coming up? Is there going to be tours during the winter aside from this for people in Canada?
I haven't heard anything yet. I mean,
Okay,
I know the guys tell me through Bernie, Uncle Bernie,
Uncle Bernie.
who is, as many of you may know, is a booking agent. Aside from being a great drummer for the Headpins, he's also a wonderful booking agent. So we're lucky that we're busy. So I'm told that we do have a busy year coming up ahead of us. So in the wintertime, it tends to be casinos mostly, some
Right.
theater shows, the occasional bar. And then once the weather warms up, it's festivals. And, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. The sad thing is when you get out and you get busy, it's like, oh, then we got to, then it slows down, just as you're, really getting, let's go out for another 3 months, but
Yeah, you're getting the groove going on, eh?
yeah, let's just get on a bus and go. So,
Right
but
on.
anyway, so that seemingly is the future. So we're still doing it. The guys are great.
The original lineup is back again.
Well, it's not quite the original. We have Peter Nunn on keyboards, and Peter
Right.
has been Ray Coburn was our original keyboard player. Ray did
Right.
play for us for a while. Ray is working with Roger Hodgson from
Oh, wow.
Supertramp fame, and I don't know if Roger is back on the road yet, but he plays like all over the world and plays these most wonderful venues, theaters, and outdoor venues all over the world. And Ray's been playing with him for that. So
Wow.
Peter Nunn, who's a tremendous
Fabulous
keyboard
keyboard
player
player.
as well. He's been actually in Honeymoon Suite longer than I have. So he's been the band's keyboard player for a very, very long time. And so the four of us original guys are there, plus Peter, though he's a band member.
Right. Good stuff. Well, Dave, I'm just going to say this on behalf of all the viewers and the fans out there. We're just so glad that you guys are still out there doing your thing and bringing us the music that we grew up listening to. The soundtrack to I like to say my misguided youth.
Yeah.
But
Well, where were you on the road for 23 years doing?
Just singing in a rock band, playing keys in a rock band.
Where
Not
were you?
like just a low level bar band, just the C circuit, but
What's
we
wrong
had
with that?
we had an agent. We booked through banks out of Edmonton, and we just hit the road, and nobody lived anywhere. So back to what you were saying, yes, back in the day, you could literally go on the road and have no fixed address and just eat hot dogs and not
Yeah.
not make a lot of money. But if that was your dream, which for me it was,
Yeah.
I was so grateful just to be doing what I loved every night. I didn't care that I wasn't getting rich or doing that,
Right. Well,
sort of
good for
thing.
you. I was, as much as I wanted to work steadily, in Ontario, it was so like you could go out as a bar band for months at a time and play Northern Quebec and Northern Ontario and, strip bars in the day and rock bands at night. And some people love that, but I couldn't imagine, you want me to go away, for that long. So it wasn't really anything I aspired to. When we were a bar band, we were lucky that our circuit was generally Southern Ontario, and we would play for 3 nights here and 3 nights there, and come home for the Sunday, then go back out for the Monday, sort of thing. So hats off to you for doing that thing where you're just gone and you're eating peanut butter sandwiches and
living the dream.
we had a soundman one time who did that. He said they used to raid people's gardens, in the middle of the night to get carrots and cucumbers, things like that, because they had no money.
Well, we weren't that bad. I think there was a few members of the band that would, I used to call them hobosexuals. It's when you find a woman with a nice home and food in her fridge and you befriend her for the night. I think there was a lot of that going on. Yeah. But I wouldn't trade those days for the world. The best days of my life and the best memories of my life.
What was the name of the band?
We were the Q at one point. There was an Uncle Salty, which was a Max Webster tribute.
Really?
And then it was Secret Lives, and for the last 15 years.
You played keyboards in a Max Webster tribute band?
Called Uncle Salty.
Wow.
So I left I hit the road when I was 18 and wow. Managed to stay working. And then I did a hypnotist show, and I saw hypnotists and learned how to do that, and then we did a hypnotist show. So it was always about finding a way to not have to get a real job and stay on the road. But they were my passion. They were the whole entertainment scene has been in my blood my entire life.
Have you ever met Terry Wilkinson?
I have not. No.
Well, you should. You should get him on your show.
I would. Maybe you can hook me up.
I don't know him. I know that he is an illustrator, but you know, and for those who don't know, he was a keyboard player for Max Webster. Max Webster was really mostly popular in Ontario, and they were, you know, on the same label as Rush, and they were kind of out there. They were sort of almost like Canada's answer to Frank Zappa in some respects. They were
Right.
they had some wonderful songs. Kim Mitchell, you know, of course, was the main singer and songwriter with Pi Dubois. But I loved Max Webster, and I loved Gary McCracken. Their drummer was a big hero of mine. I loved his playing very
Right.
much.
Well,
So good for you.
you know, maybe I'll try and get him on the show. And it's kind of funny that you bring up Kim Mitchell, because my fans and viewers of the show know that it's a sore spot with me, because I cannot for the life of me get Kim Mitchell to come on my show.
Have you reached out?
Over and over, and it was a hard no. And so I've kind of had
No,
to,
okay.
I've kind of had to just accept that. But you know, that it is what it is, and you know, you just kind of go, well, whatever.
That's okay. That's
It
fine.
is what it is. You're here. You know,
I'm
Larry
here.
Gowan
I'm no
was
Kim
here.
Mitchell, but I'm here.
Streetheart's been here. You know, all my favorites have been here, and now Honeymoon Suite has been here, a representative from Honeymoon Suite. So
Wow. Well, anytime, Kelly, if you want me to come back and bore you with the same stories, I'm happy to do it.
absolutely, you were welcome here anytime, Dave Betts. You're delightful.
All right, my dear. Thank you.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving. You take care.
All right.
And
You too. Thanks everybody for viewing.
tuning in. Right on. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Until then, stay safe and sane. Be really nice to each other. Bye-bye.